the next row on there, it has where G is followed by a U. And the U there is not pronounced. The reason for the U is to prevent the G from turning soft if it's followed by an I or an E. Okay, so if you look at those words there, the three examples of the words they have, in each case the U is followed by an I or an E. And without that U there, the G would turn soft on you. So the words we have here are guitarra, guerra, and guia. Without those U's there, it would change into guitarra, guerra, and gia, which of course would be totally different words. If the U is followed by another letter, not an I or an E, it doesn't say this in here, but if the U is followed by another letter, like let's say another vowel, A, O, or U, not U, but A or an O, then the U is pronounced. So an example of a word like that would be guardar, which means to put something away or to save it, guardar. And there, the U is pronounced. In addition, as it's in the example they give here, if they use the diaeresis, those two little dots, what you may call it, I would call it an umlaut, I guess. But if you have that over the next vowel, then you do pronounce the U, even if it's followed by an I or an E. So in the example we have here, we have the two examples, pinguino and bilingue. Okay, those would otherwise be pronounced pinguino and bilingue, but because of the umlaut or the diaeresis, you pronounce that U. So, moving on to the letter H. The letter H is never pronounced in Spanish, it's always silent, although as we've seen, if it comes after the letter C, it can turn into a CH, of course. But other than that, the H is never pronounced. This can give English speakers trouble sometimes because we want to pronounce it, especially if it's in a word that we have in English. And these being three examples right here. It's not hotel, it's hotel. It's not hospital, it's hospital. And it's not alcohol, it's alcohol. They just kind of move together like that. And finally, at the end, we have deshonesto. So the H is not pronounced. Moving on to the J. The J is basically the same as it's the same as a soft G. In fact, sometimes the H and the J and the soft G will alternate in some words. So the words we have here on the page are Jamaica, Ejecutivo, Garaje, and Jose. Jose. I want to say it the way we say it in English. Jose, right? Jose. So it's pretty easy. LL, the single L is just like the English L pretty much. The double L, though, is a little bit tricky, and here you will definitely get a difference depending on what country you're listening to. A common way to pronounce it is as the English Y sound. So the words we have on the page there would be millón, amarillo, and llama. Now, a lot of people will, instead of a Y sound, in fact I do this myself, will give it a little bit of a J kind of a sound. It's really not like the letter J in English. It's not a J exactly, but it's a little bit of a J sound. So many times you'll hear, including from me, these words pronounced millón, amarillo, and llama. So you'll get that especially in places like Argentina, where it's actually almost pronounced like an SH sound. Millón, amarillo, and llama. I have difficulty sometimes understanding Argentinos because of that. Okay, moving on. The other letters, M and N, they're not mentioned in here because they're just like in English. And the N with the tilde over it, I think most of us, certainly in the United States, are familiar with this letter in words like they have here. Mañana, montaña, and cañón. The letter Q, it says occurs only in the combinations QUE and QUI, which have a silent U. These are pretty familiar, I think, to English speakers from words that we take into English. 3 examples here being queso, Don Quixote, and chiquita, like the bananas. Chiquita meaning little girl, actually. And so that's pretty straightforward. And what you'll actually find is the C and the Q are actually closely related to each other, and they'll actually switch back and forth in some words. If you have words that have a C and then you need to put a I or an E afterwards, it'll actually switch to a QU in the spelling of the word. So it's pretty straightforward. The R sound. If the R is in the middle of the word, if it's not at the beginning, then a single R is a what's sometimes called a tap, with your tapping your tongue on your hard palate or right behind your teeth. You could think of it actually as a D type of a sound in English. The English D sound is very, very similar to that. So it's not like our English R sound. In fact, if you want to sound like a total gringo, use the R sound in these words, and it sounds really bad, believe me. So the words we would have here would be bar, cafeteria, and pirata. It's just a very quick tap. Pirata, bar, cafeteria. Some people will actually roll it a little bit at the end of the words. I'll mention that in a second. The double R together is this rolled R sound that I think most people are familiar with. It's used in other languages, for one, Scottish and Dutch. It's used in Russian, the rolled R sound. And it's used in Spanish as well, either when the R is doubled or when the R comes at the beginning of a word. So in the examples we have here, we have correcto, carrera, Roberto, and rifle. Okay, in each case it's the R sound. Now this is the normal way that if it's a single R, if it's not at the beginning of the word, it's the tap. If it's the double R or at the beginning of the word, it's the R sound. You'll actually hear sometimes people who will roll in some cases where it's not technically required. Sometimes it seems like sometimes they do it for emphasis. You'll hear it on the radio sometimes. Instead of saying pero, meaning but, somebody might say perro, which actually means dog, but you know what they mean. You will hear the rolled R a little bit. Sometimes at the end of the words, because the single R at the end of the word really doesn't have any character. It just kind of falls off the end. So in a word like hablar, which means to speak, you might hear a little bit of a roll, hablar, just a tiny bit. Finally, we get the Z. The Z in Spanish is the same as the soft C. So just like the soft C, it depends whether you are using Latin American type Spanish or the type of Spanish that is used, the type of accent that's used in most of Spain. In Latin America, again, it sounds like an S. So the words here we would have would be Zafiro and Arizona. Whereas in Spain we would have Zafiro and Arizona. I personally find this very difficult to not slip in a Z sound, an English Z sound, especially on a word like I want to say something like Arizona. Just watch it that you pronounce it like you're chosen either the Latin American or the Spanish version, Arizona or Arizona.